and I feel every path along our journey is perhaps necessary for our final destination.
Holics.com, in partnership with Heart Support and the Global Recovery Initiatives Foundation, is proud to present High Notes, a podcast about addiction and recovery in the music business. I'm your host, James Shotwell. My guest this episode is Shannon Larkin. Shannon is a legendary rock musician who's probably best known as the drummer for the band Godsmack, but who also serves as one half of the Apocalypse Blues revival and played drums on Glassjaw's Worship and Tribute. That last one isn't important to today's episode, but it is a fun rock fact. Shannon has been in the music business for decades, but it wasn't until the mid-2010s that he finally made the decision to get sober. As you'll learn, it was a culmination of life circumstances and one wild night in the studio that almost became a disastrous event that led Shannon to changing his life. And in the years since, he's kind of become a different person. He rocks harder than ever, but he has a different outlook on life, and he shares that with us today. Before we get there, I asked Shannon the same question I ask all of our guests when we first connect. How long have you been sober?
Oh my gosh, it's been over 4 years. I don't have the exact day, but I do have the app on my phone that shows you the hour, down to the hours you've been sober. And I'm well over 4 years and 3 months or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I can talk all day about it. I'm still on the pink cloud, man. It never left. It's just been, I went into Recovery Unplugged in Southeast Florida over in Fort Lauderdale. And it's run, or I don't know, he technically runs the place, but Rich is, he was in Aerosmith for a minute. And he wrote and got a Grammy for the song Pink with Steven Tyler. And he won the Grammy. He's in Aerosmith. He goes on tour. He falls back on the needle, man, and gets fired from Aerosmith. So he was just, so anyway, this plays Recovery Unplugged. I can't say enough about it because it really focuses through Richie's initial idea and guidance on using music, which isn't a new theory, with addiction. Like I was saying, even when I work on my yard, I'm thinking of music or whatever. You can divert hardships. Like if you've ever shoveled 2 yards of rock to fill in a flower bed, for instance, that's some brutal ass work, right? I'm thinking of music, Florida sun, and I know I got this 2 yards of rock to shovel or whatever, and I do that shit myself, But anyway, it's just about music diverting you. And so being a musician that's surrounded with drugs and alcohol since the age of 13, you know what I mean? And actually liked it, for the longest time before it spiraled me into these problems. I'm 30 years later, in which my life, divorce, everything, life happens. And then that's when you let these evil things like drugs and alcohol get a hold of you, My diversion became, how do I use music as a diversion? Because I'm surrounded, and I'm a lifelong musician, so I'm surrounded by drugs and alcohol. And my biggest fear was, how am I going to have fun? How am I going to have fun anymore without this, And so that's where it gets to the music part as being a diversion, because what I came to realize that really for me to have fun, I need music, whether it's backstage at the party, as long as there's music on, I could divert my lust for these dark things to the song that's playing. I always control the music in the dressing room, by the way. If not me, then Sully's in my corner or whatever. But spirituality, by the way, the higher power, I really believe that's super important. And like Richie always said, it doesn't matter if your guitar is your higher power, if it's something that you have to feel that's greater than you, And so without trying to be religious, I found spirituality in God's and whatever, it could be, I don't care if it's Jesus, whatever makes you realize that there's something greater than you out there, I think is the key to overcoming these lusts and desires that are tricking you into thinking that you need that to have fun. When I say diversions, then I also have tips on like what I did also, just because I think a lot of it with me, my alcoholism was also not only the fear of not having fun, but habit, from so many years of abusing. Instead of having a drink or whatever, I got into flavored waters, and I knew we were going to talk about it. So like right now, this is, I'm not trying to sell this company. I don't know anybody there. I'm just saying that this is a black cherry coffee, and it's not like super strong. It's hints of these flavors. And so anyway, at the time that over 4 years ago when I became sober, these things now, there's all these different ones. Oh my gosh, there's blueberry, watermelon. They got all kind of different. But when I first started, there was just like Polar Springs and one other company, Bubbly or whatever, that had these flavored waters, man. And since I've been sober in the last 4 years, oh my gosh, now there's all these different things. But anyway, it's carried on as something now, like at a party, I'll show up with a 12-pack of flavored waters, you know what I mean? And it's become quite easy once I think you get over the fact that being in an altered state of mind is necessary to have fun. And even with drugs and stuff, like when I was in my 20s and I'm in, you know what I mean, doing drugs and stuff, I find that now in my 50s, I can go into these places without the drug. But I mean, you know what I mean? Like if you've been there and experienced these things, you can recreate them in your mind without having to really alter your mind and have the negative consequences, because there's lots of positive aspects, for instance, of marijuana and drug use. I'm not talking about hard drugs, obviously, but I did, do a lot of, psychedelic drugs, we'll say, mushrooms, acid, and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Ecstasy, stuff like that. And the one thing I did, having spirituality being one of the biggest things that helped me go sober and be happily sober, by the way. I had a Halloween party, man, and I stocked everything, alcohol, all kind of bottles I went and got the best, whiskeys and for my friends, man, 30 people at my house, my sponsor was there, but everybody else pretty much is drinking whatever and partying and stuff. But I got like 15 different kinds of beer, and I stocked this, made a badass party out of it. And I had the best time. And not once did I go, God, I wish I could drink, like I wish I could be. And now, like when I see people, I'm like, oh my God, I used to be that guy. You know what I mean? I'm just freely talking now about, ways that I've found that I can get over on this disease, because that's what it is. And, everybody I feel, has to do it in different ways. But I do think at the base of it, it all comes down to the higher power thing and being able to know that you can have fun without altering your mind that way.
Shannon was decades into a successful career and already in his 40s when he made the decision to get clean. I wanted to know what changed. What was happening in the days, weeks, or months leading up to his decision to get sober that finally pushed him in that direction?
We had the blues thing going on, Tony and I, and Godsmack was on a big break. And we just toured hard for a year or whatever, and I wasn't home, and my marriage was not good for a couple years. Personal things, in relationship, in my personal life, you know what I mean, that I don't talk about. But I'll just say that I'm no longer married. And so I went through that. And to deal with that, I for sure started morning drinking, and I was 2 years of basically hiding my drinking, which I'd never done. And see, as a rocker or rock star or musician, successful musician, however you want to put it, we are enabled completely. If I want cocaine, which I haven't done since 1982 or something, but if I want that, I could ask somebody and I'd have it in my hand like tomorrow or in an hour. Any drugs or alcohol, we're enabled to the point where it's on our rider that we get free alcohol every night, way too much for even any humans to drink. It's just part of the gig, right? From being in that enabled position, I'd never had to hide it. Well, when my personal issues started happening, now I found myself hiding because I had started drinking earlier to kind of, for escapism, get away from all these and just go into music. And I would go and it started at the rehearsal place Tony and I had, and I would go there and we would show up at 11, in the afternoon, and I would open the Jack bottle, man, and I would have it in my coffee and start and not be wasted or drunk or I'd like drink a whiskey and coffee, and then like at 11, and then like at 1, then we do a shot when we got done a song. Oh, we made this new song, and we do shots. And then by 4 o'clock, now we're getting on our Harleys and driving home from practice with like 4 or 5 shots in us, but spread over 4 or 5 hours. And so it's not like and I'm hiding it from my wife and kid. And then on days off, I found myself just, putting whiskey in my coffee and starting to setting the tone for the day, like, oh, it's a false sense of happiness and security that alcohol gave me. And so, I got worse and worse into where I was basically, the fifth a day guy, you know what I mean? And then people started noticing, one night we were at the rehearsal place, and Tony left, and there was a band next door that had the rehearsal place next door. And I was probably, 3/4 of the fifth in. So I go over and I invite everybody over for a blues jam, which I'd done many times, and we always had a great time. But it was one of those days that I did the one drink too many thing. And I suffered, probably 4 to 5 blackouts a year, in which, I mean, I quit the band Godsmack as many times as I was fired, because I would do horrible things. And I don't know, I'm in, Bulgaria, for instance, and I stripped my clothes off and ran into the woods saying I'm going home, I quit the band, whatever, shit like that's just not me. And I mean, I did therapy and looked and searched and still never found any like reason for this. I had a great set of parents, and I've the greatest daughter. All I went through, I wasn't happy anymore with my woman that I chose to be the woman for the rest of my life. And I felt all this pressure about my Christian upbringing and divorce and all this crap. And I hadn't really located what I truly believed in and faith wise. And it's funny to me, I explored for a long, ever since I was 16, and I started, exploring different options than what the Catholic school I grew up in was, which I found lots of fault with. Nothing against Christians, Catholics, or Judaism or Muslims, nothing against any religion. Like I said earlier, you can worship that lampshade. I don't care, as long as it's something that's greater than you and you believe it's good. In the very end, I had this big jam and something happened and a blackout happened is what happened. And then the apocalypse came out, and next thing you know, they said that and the proof was in the pudding the next day. But Keith Moon, my drum set, I lost it for no reason, they said. And I jumped up and crashed my drum set. Everybody get the out of here, and kicked everybody out and did this thing, right? And then so they all were like, oh, later on, they all left. And then around 1:30 in the morning, I guess, because I'm still in a blacked out state, by the way. I don't know. I finished the bottle and got on my Harley. And then I backed it up, dropped it, thank God, before I could go out on the road and kill a family of 5 or something, right? So dropped the thing on my boot. I have my bike boots on. See, I'm lucky. They call me lucky behind my back. But thousands of events that I should be dead. But anyway, I'm lucky. I dropped the bike. It lands right on the heel of my big ass biker boot, right? And luckily, if it would have been another inch, it'd have crushed my ankle and I'd have been all messed up. But it didn't. It landed right at that. But now I got a 1,000-pound or 900-pound motorcycle on my leg. I'm about 100 pounds. That's when now I'm back. I don't know if you've ever blacked out, what your story is, but you all of a sudden you can come back and you're like, where am I? What happened? And I'm laying with my motorcycle on me and I can't get it off. And so now I'm like, I can't call the wife, So I call my good buddy Bill, and he gets up at 7 in the morning. He's a normal dude, man. And I had no one else. I called him and said, hey, man, I'm laying in this parking lot with my bike on me. I can't get it off. Can you come help me? And he was there in 10 minutes, and lifted the bike off me. He said, get back in the rehearsal room, where I was stinking drunk still. I'd just come out of my blackout, but now I'm not violent anymore towards myself and others, but I'm still wasted. So he got me back into my place where we had a couch bed thing I could sleep on and stay there. If I was too drunk to drive, I'd stay there. So, but the next morning I woke up. It wasn't really about me, as cliche as it sounds, man. I was like, God, I could have literally drove that motorcycle and killed a bunch of people. Like, I'd have drove out in front of somebody, and next thing you know, I'd have that guilt to live with, killing somebody or something. And so it was enough, man, James, to make me call my manager and say, I don't know what the hell, but I can tell you this. I'm ready to look in the mirror and say I'm an alcoholic, and I'm not. I never wanted to be, a whining rock star in rehab. That was always so dumb to me. And and now I understand it. If there's anything to be gained out of it, is everything.
I think it's safe to say that Shannon had a reputation, or I should say, Shannon's drinking had a reputation. And when he decided to get clean, I'm sure there were people who were on the fence about whether or not to believe him. So I wanted to know about those initial conversations. Who was the first person he told about getting sober, and what happened after? Did they believe him? Did they get him help? Or did they doubt his ability to do it?
It's hard to answer that question because I was such a state, man. And, and then when I decided to call my manager, my then manager, he made the call to Music Cares. They found Recovery Unplugged for me in Florida, which was only a few hours away. And then I had to commit, in 3 days to go and take a month and go into rehab, which, again, I was no fan, and I'd never had any kind of therapy before or anything like that, and I've always been very, happy and very, very strong-willed. All of a sudden now I'm like, oh no, I'm going to quit drinking now forever. So I have to really drink a lot. And so on those 3 days before I went to rehab, oh my God, I made it like a mission to just drink everything I could, as much as I could. And I got, really wasted and a lot and was crying with myself. And next thing you know, I find myself in this nightmare movie where, I'm literally, I Want to Be Sedated Ramones video wearing a white dress and getting drugs given to me. And I'm like, hey man, I'm just an alcoholic. And they're like, just an alcoholic. You guys are the ones that die. The heroin addict and the cocaine addict, they don't die. They go through hell and torment and torture. But you alcoholics, that's when your shit shuts down and you die. And so you have to, and so then that hit me, oh my God, this ain't over. I got to get through this. And the whole time, of course, I'm going, I'm going to drink again. It's just, I got to get through this and try, and yet no one was forcing me in. I'm doing this to myself. And so I was so confused, man. And thank God when I got in, these therapists, man, they just got me. And I, next thing you know, I'm having these like literal breakthroughs. My mind started getting sharper almost within 2 weeks. Like I actually started processing, things, and I've always been what Stephen King calls a constant reader. I have, I'll have literally 3 books open a week, as I do right now. Usually 2 nonfiction and a fiction, right? And it's just something that I love to take, and I urge everyone to take an hour or 2, if you can afford an hour out of your day. If not a half an hour, 20 minutes even, read. We have these things, but whatever you're reading. But anyway, so the constant reader thing, I just started noticing that I'm retaining information now that I didn't seem to be retaining just only a couple weeks ago. And it was noticeable to me, who I'm not some college graduate or something, but I'm no dummy, and I'm very, I read a lot. So to notice a difference the beautiful part of this, by the way, is that a year later, there was like another seeming shift in my consciousness. And all of a sudden I'm retaining more information now. Like I always tell people I could always remember 1,000 songs. It's just whatever. I'm born that way. It was something. I can listen to a song and I can pretty much remember it and go and record it. But reading, I always have trouble, and I don't have not trouble reading, trouble remembering passages. I'll remember even the gist of it. But some people can just quote a passage out of a book. I was never that dude. Now I'm starting to be that dude. And it's just the memories just retained now better in the brain. So I don't know if that's, also I brought these over because I wanted to show you this is cool stuff when I talked about diversions, right? And I got into the flavored waters, and this is just stuff, but this stuff, Arden's Garden, it's wheatgrass, right? Wheatgrass. And then this one is Arden's Garden. This is my favorite one. And it's called Firecracker. It's lemon, cayenne pepper, probiotics. And anyway, it's all natural, like shots, right? This one here is turmeric and cayenne pepper. But anyway, some are like, they say like immunity detox. They say, one's just a vitamin C or whatever. But my point is, like, at the party that we had, the Halloween party, and all my friends are there, and everybody's banging shots of vodka or whatever. And I always grab one of these, out of the fridge. Hey, everybody's just, let's do a shot. I do a healthy shot of probiotics. Isn't that wild? And I mean, but this firecracker one, for instance, by the way, it also, it's wicked hot. You know what I mean? So it makes you go, oh, so you're like, oh, it's almost like when you did a shot of tequila or something. You're, oh, you know what I mean? So if anybody's having problems like, oh, I missed that, there's also alternatives to that, man. I'm going to do one right now. It's my liquid lunch. My liquid lunch used to be Jack Daniels. Now it's lemon, cayenne pepper. But anyway, Arden's Garden, you can get it at Publix. I'm telling you, firecracker.
Shannon seems to be in a good place, so I felt comfortable asking him when the last time he had a craving to drink was, and when was the last time he felt genuinely tempted to do so.
Yesterday. I mean, shit, man, I'm not going to sit here and say, I will say I'm a recovered alcoholic, and I'm very, very, very happy and smart, happier and smarter than I've ever been and felt. I'm an old man in this business. Like Tom Brady's an old man to football or whatever. I'm an old man in rock and roll, drumming, metal rock drummer. But I feel physically, and I'm all of 105 pounds, by the way, but I feel physically better and mentally better than I felt my whole life. And so, but would I be telling the honest truth if I said that the struggle isn't real and that every time I sit down to watch the Raiders play, I don't feel like an ice cold bud? That's what I try and tell people, man. It's not the feeling of being drunk to me that I miss. It's the camaraderie of that beer that I had, man. Like I'm one of these football fans that I don't like to have a bunch of friends around. Oh, they get me on, or God forbid, root for the other team even. I don't want that. It's my house. I'd like to sit there with myself and my Budweiser beer and watch the Raiders lose. That's my deal, right? And so I got to say that, football season was a trigger. These are just triggers, though. And it's just like with the dreaded cigarettes, which I still struggle with. I don't smoke cigarettes, but, I have I'm trying to, again, everybody's different. I found that substitution, like doing a shot of wheatgrass instead of a shot of Jack Daniels, or drinking an AHA instead of a Budweiser, or, smoking a blue cigarette vape thing, which are way overpriced. But it's something that, keeps me from breaking down and buying that pack of Marlboro Lights or whatever, and so I do use substitution, but not everybody can do that, And obviously, though, with these things, I will state these blue things. I don't condone them, and I am using these to get off the cigarettes, and it's been like over 2 months now, and so I have to get off these now, which are another addiction all in their self. They taste wonderful. And it's a shame because at least cigarettes taste shitty, and they make your hair and clothes smell and everything around you. And I used to feel cool. Now I feel like, I'm gross and an old redneck. But I am. I'm gonna get rid of these. It's all a work in progress. There's not enough magic that I can do make me stop smoking. Willpower is a funny thing, and we all have it. And again, it reverts to that whole microcosm, macrocosm, higher power thing that's out there that you just have to, whatever it may be for you, you have to tap into it because it's stronger and greater than you and can force you to not drink and still be happy, or to not do drugs and still be happy, or get off these damn things and still be happy. And a lot of it, again, is habit. And then, so I took to chewing gum, man. And then now this guy, hey, yeah, oh, yeah. And then every interview I did, I see myself. I'm like, I look like a jackass sitting there chewing gum, like, and then it was Nicorette and all this crap, man. So nicotine is just as bad as addiction as any of the other ones that I've been cursed with, but it's again a work in progress. And I do feel, that said, that we're talking about this, it's all positive. It's if people will simply let it out. That's the thing about it. Like, we have this foundation, Godsmack, we have the Scars Foundation. It's an actual legit foundation. We help people, and it's been up and running for almost 2 years now, and we see where every penny goes. I swear to you, it's a nonprofit that, there's nothing shady about this. I know, I sit on the board of directors, and we help people, and it's a real thing. And the whole thing with us is like, don't be silent. If I maybe could have admitted out loud that I was an alcoholic, that everybody knew for at least 10, 15 years of my life, everybody knew it. But again, I'm me, man. And I'm this dude that's in a band, and I looked on your list and I was like, oh my God, I know all the dudes. Clint is a friend. Head is a friend. Everybody that I saw that's been on your show, I'm like, I know and love those dudes. You know what I mean? Like, we are, everybody. Head, I think, went with a Christian route. Whatever it is, it's all about, man, the will. It's all about the will. And so we just have to, find that thing that it sparks our will. And then with willpower, then you figure out your own power and happiness,
Shannon is the latest in a long line of guests on our show who have been afforded the opportunity to live out those wild rock star fantasies that we always hear about in books, movies, and TV shows. He's done and seen things that the rest of us can only really imagine, but he counts himself lucky because, by and large, Shannon is just an alcoholic. That's always been his number one addiction, and he doesn't have some of the crazy overseas stories that our other guests do. But that doesn't mean that he hasn't lived through a lot.
I'm an alcoholic, pure and simple. Although I lived through the late 70s and the 80s, which were, the 80s were cocaine times, and that's just the country. It was just like, I witnessed that whole, where you'd go to a party and people, so everybody be dumping out blow on the table. And it wasn't like and then you saw it a couple years later, and then people started grouping and going in the bathroom 2, 3, 4 at a time. And that cocaine wasn't cool anymore to put out on the table, right? Now you went in the bathroom and did it. And then a few years after that, cocaine's just not cool, period. And we all just quit. Coke is whack. You know what I mean? Crack came and all this bullshit. And it was like, I watched that go away. So I was lucky that did the hard stuff at a time and period in my life that was either non-addicting, period, maybe. I don't know. I had, my focus was stronger. My will was stronger towards probably my, music and stuff. And I didn't allow those hard drugs. In other words, I never had meth shipped to me anywhere. And I can't even imagine the pain that Brian went through for that, because I did meth one time in my life. I tried, and I didn't even know. I thought I was doing a line of coke. It was in the 80s. And meth was called, I think they were calling it crank, I think, back then or something. And I did the line, and I was like, it feels like you're snorting glass, broken glass. It was the word. I'm like, people do this? And I'm like, what the F is this? And, and my buddy was like, oh, it's crank, dude, speed or whatever. And I was like, yeah, dude, that sucks, dude. And what are you doing?
Yes.
Literally, dude, like 3 days later, like I said, I keep saying 100 pounds. I've been this all my life. I've never been over like 115 pounds. I'm a skinny dude, always have been. And one line of meth, and I was like I said, that was the worst experience. I've never touched that since. And when we were all, I think it was 40, when I turned 40, I vowed to never touch cocaine or heroin again. And I never have. So, I think it's, obviously I wasn't addicted to those drugs, or I couldn't just swear them off without any kind of rehab or therapy, because I do, by the way, talking to you, James, and anybody watching this for these reasons to talk about addiction stuff, I totally recommend therapy, man. And I was, like I said, I was a little punk rock kid. I never dreamed that I'd be one of these old dudes that went to rehab and all that crap. But I can say this, it's all in the end about being happy in life. And again, you don't need that crap to be happy. And that's a big fear I think a lot of musicians watching this will have. Like, God, we're not only at the party every night, we're the host. Like, we're the dudes throwing the party. You're coming backstage, we want to offer you a party, man, and alcohol and all that, everything that you would think people expect from you, so a lot of the times we're not, and we get sucked into it, and then our addictive personalities take over, and then it's too late for us, and we're hooked, and we know we're hooked. And so I was blessed to not have been that. I let the alcohol though get its claws in me, and as I've said before, it's just as bad. I don't care, if you're doing meth or if you're just drinking a case and a half of beer a day. One is as bad as the next, and both will kill you, or make you end up unhappy, or worse, in jail. Definitely unfulfilled. That's another thing. You can never get enough when you're fucked up.
There are many people who look at drugs and alcohol as a way to make a good time even better. But for those caught in the cycle of abuse, there is no making it better through drugs and alcohol. They view drugs and alcohol as a way of getting away from their problems, something to help them escape their reality for a little while. But what they come to realize, or at least what we hope they come to realize, is that there is no escape. There is no pause button for life. There is just the time that we have, and we need to process our traumas, and we need to work through our problems. And if we take drugs and alcohol, if we allow ourselves to give in to substances, that only prolongs the suffering. The only way out is through, and the only way through is to address what's holding us back, the things that we are trying to escape in the first place.
So it didn't help. I do envy. I will say that I envy folks that are normal and don't have the disease. That can be just normal social drinker like my father was. He just was normal and he could drink, and but yet he could drink, and I envy that, because I can't. One thing leads to another, and my excessive self-destructive personality takes over, and next thing you know, and believe me, man, before I went to rehab and ditched this for good, over the years, I'd never said I'm quitting forever, but I always said I'm quitting, and I would put, time on it, quit for a week, or I would do the old, I just won't drink hard liquor, and I just do the beer and wine, which we all went through, I'm sure, and then that doesn't work either. Nothing works except for complete knowing and looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, man, I'm going to die. I'm unhappy. And why am I doing this? Because I don't need it. And I know that there's something out there that's greater than me, that gives me willpower, and I got to exert my willpower. It's all about the will, man.
I tell Shannon that I often feel there are two types of people in this world. Those who are able to just have one drink or smoke one joint and be good for the evening, and those of us who aren't.
I guess it's like anything else. If say, good at singing then you don't want to get in a band and try and sing because you're just going to make a fool of yourself, right? And so, I'm definitely bad at drinking. It's not something I'm good at either. And I think, if I was good at it, then perhaps I wouldn't have let it overtake me and let it turn into a problem. In other words, some people are inherited, like they inherit this. I obviously didn't. And so something inside me, turned me and made me, what I was. And so it wasn't something that I was dealt, I brought it upon myself. I wasn't like, oh, I got dealt a bad card and my dad is an alcoholic or something, and as far as I can tell, my daughter, who's 22 and at USF, and he has no qualms or issues or problems with drugs or alcohol. Never has. Doesn't even. She tried pot a couple times and said it just made her sleepy. And I mean, this proof's in the pudding. She graduated cum laude last year, and she's all A's and B's. She's a super smart, has everything together. The thing that makes me more proud than any plaque on a wall or whatever is this creature this human that I helped create. That's so smart and beautiful and has it all together again. And I tell her, Dad is an alcoholic, so please, when you go and you're partying with your friends, know that it could be genetics. And she, okay, Dad, oh yeah. It's not. In my case, luckily, I let something inside me bring this disease to me. And the only way that I could get rid of it was to believe in a greater power and my willpower. And that was that.
As I said at the top of this episode, Shannon is a living rock legend. Whether we're discussing his work with Godsmack, the Apocalypse Blues Revival, Glassjaw, Ugly Kid Joe, or one of the dozen-plus additional projects he's been part of, Shannon has contributed to some of the most important rock songs of all time, songs that will no doubt outlast us all. And that means that he has fans around the world who believe in him and who listen to him and trust his advice. But we don't give advice in this show, and we don't give advice in recovery, because we don't really know someone's full story. But nonetheless, people are going to look at Shannon and they're going to want to learn from him. So I had to ask, when people approach Shannon looking for suggestions on how to improve their lives, what does he say to them?
Well, again, yeah, it's unanswerable because every person that comes up to me usually starts with at least a flash of their story. Hey, man, I did this and that, next thing I ended up and whatever. And so any advice that I would try and give would be different to the person. Like, people come up and they're literally crying and your music has helped me through this, or you changed my life in this way, and I used to be this, I used to be that. And so a lot of times, rather than try and give advice, they just want a hug and some, I don't know, affirmation that, that I care, and we all should care, man, about everyone else that's going through any of these issues. I get more people that are probably suffering from, depression approach me for some kind of advice than people that are suffering from alcoholism or drug abuse. But, a lot of times the two unfortunately coexist, and so that if you have alcohol or drug, you're usually depressed too, but as far as advice, man, shoot, I like to just be positive. I try to be really positive always. And I always go to the willpower thing because really, you can't really blame anyone else. I mean, you can be raised in a bad family and that certainly will have an effect. It's all cause and effect in this, macrocosm, but you can't blame the fact that you grew up in the ghetto with no father figure or enabled rock star since the age of 13 and everything given to you. You can't blame these things because really you have the choice. You have the heart, you have the soul. It's your choice. Do you want to snort that? It all comes down to a yes or no. So if I say yes and I go and I snort that, well, guess who's the weakling? And guess who loses? I lost. And so, but I have. we all, as long as we're one and we all just have to understand that we can beat this and be happy, then man, I would never say to not experience and live your life. And I've never been one for complete abstinence or something, and I feel every path along our journey is perhaps necessary for our final destination. And had I not laid that bike down on my ankle that day and not been able to get it off me, then maybe I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now in this positive aura like I am. Again, I'm still on this pink cloud thing, and I'm still happily sober. And I attribute that to having willpower enough to convince myself, whether it's self-imposed wisdom, but I've convinced myself that we don't need anything to be happy except for music and what's inside us, higher power and love, and any kind of change that we make is on us. Just like if I snort that line or I don't, it's all on me. So for anyone to say, oh man, the world's against me and nobody loves me, everybody hates me, go in the garden and eat worms, got to wake up and take initiative, whether it's checking yourself into rehab, or if you can't afford that, well, go to AA meetings. They're free. People will talk to you about how bad you feel, and they're going to feel even worse sometimes. And then all of a sudden you'll get a perspective. Oh shit, man, there's other people out there that dude's got it way worse than what I've had it in the last 2 months. He's been sober for 2 weeks. So, you know what I mean? So there's some advice I'll say out loud, get help, find it. Don't hold it in, man. There's people out there you can talk to. My sponsor, that dude must be, I don't know, 60, 65 or whatever, and I saw him at an AA meeting and he had mentioned the Stooges of all things, right? Iggy Pop from Detroit. And I guess he was talking and he had mentioned the Stooges. So, and I was fresh in AA, out of rehab and doing my 30 days or 30 meetings in 30 days after rehab, right? And I walked up to that dude and I'm like, what's your name? He's all, Kevin. I'm like, Kevin, I'm Shannon. I want you to be my sponsor because you know about the Stooges. And he goes, oh, I know Iggy Pop. And he ended up, this dude grew up in Detroit and knew Iggy, blah, 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 and called him on the phone and everything, all this. But my point is, get out there and go to AA meeting. If you're having these issues and you're not even sure, say you're on the fence, it's fun anyway. I mean, well, I say fun. I mean fun like you'll see and hear interesting things at AA meeting. There's nothing wrong with if you're on the fence and you're not ready to admit it, or perhaps you're not really even at the point where you need help yet. But if you're even considering it, you're getting close. And so why not do something proactive and use your willpower to make things better? That's all.
I really appreciate Shannon's willingness to be so candid with us in this conversation. He's done and seen more than most of us ever will, and thankfully, he's learned a lot that he can now share with us. If you or someone you know is suffering, please seek help. You can reach out to the High Notes team or to our partners at Heart Support and the Global Recovery Initiatives Foundation, or just a meeting in your local community. There are people everywhere who want to help you, who want to hear your story, and who will cheer you on every single step of the way. For High Notes, my name is James Shotwell. The show is brought to you by Holics.com and edited by Landon Defever. Our programming consultant is Laura Haggard. The music for this episode was made by the band You, Me, and Everyone We Know, and the artwork for the series was created by the great Nick Ferran. You can find High Notes online by looking up High Notes Pod on Instagram and Twitter. We have more episodes coming soon, so please subscribe and stick around. We'd love to have you as a part of our community. Until next time, all we ask is this: no matter where you are or what you're going through, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it.